Hello everybody and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be checking out something called Radius Raid by developer Jack Rugile. It is a pseudo twin-stick shooter. Think maybe Geometry Wars meets something like Asteroids, with a few tweaks on the pretty popular twin-stick shooter formula. And if you followed the show for any length of time, you'll know I'm a huge fan of these style games, action, arcade, sort of score attack-oriented things, and I'm also a massive fan of Geometry Wars, and I've gone on record as saying I've spent many more hours playing it than I probably should have. As such, I've seen a lot of clones and derivations and sort of Me Too style games that follow in that same format, and this one I feel like does enough right that it sort of breaks away from that clone territory and sort of asserts itself into some new areas. And I'm not saying that it's that different per se, but I also do feel like there's a number of different little miniature tweaks and derivations that you can make to the Geometry Wars idea. And I'm speaking in general of games that involve, you know, Robotron style stuff, because I am aware that this is where that concept even came from. But, you know, there's enough options and changes to things that I think that plenty of ideas can survive, and Radius Raid definitely does a good job. So why don't we jump into our credits real quick, and then I'll have a look at our stats screen here. We've got a couple of runs that I've done so far, or a handful actually, and they generally have run about between 3 and 6 minutes for the good ones. And let's jump into things. I'll start going over. So we have a wave-based system here. We're going to be shooting all of these circles of various sorts and colors with different AI behaviors and such while we navigate around this square arena using our WASD or arrow keys, along with our mouse, which you can see is the crosshair that I'm moving around in order to direct where my ship is pointing at. When I fire, my ship seems to turn a nice little rainbow, which is pretty nice. You can sort of use that to differentiate yourself from the enemies in background, which I always do appreciate. And one of the major tweaks and differences between this and Geometry Wars, well, two of the big ones, rather, are that there are discrete power-ups, and yes, I am aware that Geometry Wars does have power-ups. It's got, you know, a couple different shots, and smart bombs, and the shots you alternate between, but in this one, you're actually picking up icons on the playfield, which will give you a short amount of time to use those things. This game doesn't actually have smart bombs, but it does have a different health system, and one that I'm kind of thankful for. In this case, we actually have a number of hits that we can take before we die. So if I want to run into this circle here, take a few shots, doesn't actually kill me, and it ends up being a little bit more forgiving because, well, you'll see later on, things get very chaotic. But as far as our power-ups, we've got a triple shot, a piercing shot, a fast shot, slow enemies, and we can pick up health packs. So instead of gaining extra lives or more smart bombs in this, we will want to try and grab enough health packs that as they tick through their timers, we'll actually be able to gain enough health to get back in the game and hopefully live a little bit longer. So you'll see at the top where there's a progress bar, we're actually filling that up. Each time I fill it to the max, we're progressing from one wave to the next. And you'll see that number on the bottom right corner changing up one higher. So the general premise here, just survive as long as possible, shoot as many of these enemies as you can, and as the screen starts to fill up, try and manage your space as properly as possible. So, you know, it's a simple concept, but I think it goes a long way, and I think in this case, although we don't have like a pumping soundtrack, there's still enough nice, like, retro-sounding sound effects and things to set the stage, as well as I believe the art style is quite nice, too. I've seen people take approaches similar to this, where we do this, it's a sort of a sprite art, but sort of fancy at the same time, and it seems to run a nice level of detail where things are not trying to come across as overly fancy. I think it just does the job. You know, you can see everything well. It differentiates each enemy from each other in the background and your ship, and you can sort of easily prioritize what you need to be doing to stay alive in this game. One of the problems, I'd say, well, I don't know if it's a problem, but one of the minor issues or gripes that I have with Geometry Wars is eventually, in that game, things get so chaotic that you can't even find your ship anymore. And I believe this game sort of solves that problem by having about 1,000% less particles going on, and, you know, that's one of the reasons that I think a lot of people were attracted to Geometry Wars, is the graphics are absolutely beautiful, and it looks like you're running around inside of fireworks, which, you know, honestly is a pretty neat thing to look at, but in terms of gameplay, it might be a little difficult to track your actual ship, and in this one, don't really have that problem as much. And also, you can generally tell what you're shooting at and not being shot at, because there's not as many issues in terms of things coming after you. There's generally just circles, and they're all just kind of bumbling around doing various things. They all seem to have different AI routines based on their colors, but having played a few runs of this now, I'm still not entirely sure which ones I need to really look out for. The only major differences that I can see are, like, the big ones seem to split into small ones sometimes. I think it's the blue ones that do that. And the smaller ones tend to chase around. The yellow ones seem to just sort of arbitrarily move in circular patterns. And that's about it. Other than that, they just seem to sort of move randomly, and I'm kind of okay with that. You can see some minor swarming behaviors going on there, but it's not really obvious what they're all doing. Maybe if I play this for hours and hours, I'll start to develop a sense for what every color means to me. But what I'm really after is just trying to grab as many of these power-ups in tandem as possible, try and keep their timers going so I actually have a chance at maybe knocking down the enemy numbers when things start to get really crazy. And I kind of wish that the timers were maybe a little bit longer, because I really do enjoy having the power-ups, but I feel like as soon as I get them, they're already gone. And I guess the trade-off here, and I'm sure this was a balancing decision by the developer, the trade-off is that, like, you get them a lot more frequently, but they don't last as long. I think maybe I would be interested anyway in seeing what the other side of that balance equation would be, where you get them less frequently, but they last a lot longer. It's nice to feel powerful in games, especially when you're being overwhelmed, where, like, you can all of a sudden turn the tides. And I guess in this case, there's so many enemies and they rush you so quickly, maybe having the balance be weighed in this direction is kind of the only option, because otherwise you'd end up in a situation where things go badly for a short amount of time, all of a sudden you don't get power-ups for a few moments and it's already over. But thankfully in this case, you can take a few hits and run away and try and regroup on the other side of the screen. Since a lot of the enemies will follow you, you can kind of use that to your advantage to group them together, and perhaps even just eliminate them all in a big chunk. I have also noticed one of the differences from this and Geometry Wars being that I have actually seen some minor slowdown issues, particularly when I was trying to play the game in a way that I don't think I was meant to. I was sort of playing a pacifist mode for a moment. I was grouping them all together into a chunk and then letting them all sit together overlapping each other, and I think there was so much transparency stuff going on, and maybe the AI was having difficulty overlapping with itself so much that it seemed to slow down the game a little bit. And one thing that I have to say, amazingly enough, Geometry Wars, even running on a 360, I don't think I've ever hardly seen it have any frame rate problems, which I don't know how they pulled that off. Honestly, I was amazed. Even the first time I saw the game running, you know, in the lower levels of gameplay, it was pretty phenomenal that they were able to get that much stuff going on with AI, where it almost started to look like you were looking at a living wave of colors, and things still managed to keep up with particle effects. I guess they found some sort of critical mass equation where there was, like, no more that they could do to the situation to make it worse, no matter what happened, and things would still remain fluid. So, whatever they did, kind of struck gold with that. So, what wave are we on now? I didn't catch the last number. There isn't actually a readout of that anywhere, but we do have a radar, which is kind of neat, and I don't see anything like that going on in most of these style of games. It can be quite useful if you end up getting a grouping of enemies happening all on one side of the screen, where you can see maybe I want to avoid the other side for the moment while we work away at one corner. And I really love when these effects overlap with each other, and I think that's part of why I wanted the balance to weigh more in the other direction, because it's really entertaining when you get fast shot, triple shot, and piercing shots all at the same time. And I guess the thought is, as things get more and more chaotic, you have a higher chance of running into, you know, large masses of enemies, thereby resulting in a higher chance of getting all of the power-ups at the same time, which kind of makes you pretty overpowered, because the enemies don't really have much defense. There's not, like, a magnet-style shield guy in this game which will just block your shots. Everything takes damage from all sides, so it's kind of up to your chances of just getting all of those at the same time, not running into a bunch of stuff. But I think we should probably cut the episode fairly short. That was a surprisingly in-depth comparison of Radius Raid with Geometry Wars. Well, I guess it's apt to happen considering, like I said, one of my favorite games in a similar genre. I think Radius Raid really does do a number of things to differentiate itself. I wish it had, like, online leaderboards, though, and maybe some achievements or something to keep me moving on further into it, because right now it's just up to how much do I want to play it. And also a downloadable client would be fantastic, too. Not that it's bad or anything playing it online, but it's just the type of game that I imagine I would probably be more likely to play if I didn't have to go to a website every time, but maybe that's just a personal gripe. Anyway, highly recommended. Radius Raid, definitely one of the better pseudo-twin-stick shooters I've run into. Well, yeah, I guess that's one of the other criticisms I'd say. If you can map the controls to a gamepad, particularly a 360 control stick situation would be fantastic, but, you know, it controls fine with mouse and keyboard as well, which Coming from playing something like Geometry Wars Galaxies with the Wii, using a pointing and a nunchuck scenario, this is definitely preferable to that. But still, I think the only best option would be something like a control stick, just given the fact that you only have like 8 directions using WASD to move around in, rather, and it's kind of important that you have that sort of non-angular ability to sort of in an analog manner navigate between shapes, especially when they're circular, right? You kind of want to be able to navigate those curves. Anyway, again, minor gripes. Go play Radius Raid. It is free. You can play it in your browser. Link's going to be in the description. Let me know what you think of it in the comments, and of course, let me know your high scores. I'd like to get a little bit of competition going on amongst you guys if you don't mind. And of course, be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy what I do here, and that is indie impressions every single day, so be sure to come back again tomorrow. New episodes will be up ad infinitum as long as you guys consider or continue being interested in the show, and hopefully you do, because we are, well, I'm considering possibly when we're near the 1,000 episodes mark, which is somewhere around the beginning of 2015, I think. We'll consider whether or not we're going to keep going with the show from here on out. So, you know, let me know if you're still into it. Seems like viewership has been dropping, but I'm going to probably chalk that up to summer break and people being interested in other things for the moment, and that's totally fine. I just hope things bounce back, because it feels, you know, a little discouraging sometimes when it seems like viewership just keeps dropping, although I continue to look for more interesting, artistic, unique, and original indie games. So, like I said, I enjoy and appreciate all of your support. Leave some comments. Let me know that you're still here, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.